Hello, Douglas Roberts here, Education Development Officer for the Scottish Council on Archives. This is 10-20-30, our winter series of learning modules for archivists and heritage organisations. Today we're looking at video and audio podcasts. Podcasts are everywhere. In January 2021, there are estimated to be over 1 million active podcasts available in the world, offering over 30 million podcast episodes, according to the Podcasts Insights company. In the United Kingdom, over 15 million people listened to or watched podcasts in 2020, and nearly half of those audio podcasts were listened to in cars or other forms of transport. So, what's a podcast and why are they so popular? A podcast is a spoken word audio program, just as you might hear on a talk radio station, usually on a particular subject or theme and often part of a series of episodes that link together. The difference between a podcast and a radio program is that a podcast is available through the internet and can be downloaded to a device like a phone or computer or a tablet for listening whenever you like. You can even subscribe to a podcast series and have the episodes downloaded automatically to your device in order and then deleted automatically when you've listened to them. Podcasts can be any length, from a few minutes to many hours, and they come in a huge range of styles and formats. They used to be a niche interest. Just as the internet was once a nerdy geek's fever dream, podcasts were the domain of radio ham enthusiasts and those of us who carefully collected locomotive identification numbers and rubbings of drain covers. But in recent years, podcasts have become mainstream. Podcasts are produced by every major and minor media company in the world as part of their regular output, and by companies across the world, but equally by individuals with a phone or a digital recorder. Increasingly, podcasts have video as well as audio content. Sometimes this just means it's radio with pictures, and sometimes it's an all-singing, all-dancing production, more like a short film. We'll have a look at reasons for this in a minute, but let me tell you first what we're going to cover in this short introductory film and in our upcoming 10-20-30 learning webinar on podcasting. How can podcasts be useful for us in archives? How do you structure a podcast? What equipment and software do you need? What style should you use? How do you get it onto the internet? A podcast is a pretty useful tool in our outreach toolkit these days. Statistics show that most people who listen to podcasts are interested in learning new information as well as being entertained. A podcast attracts an audience of people who are specifically interested in what you have to offer, and they want to learn more. They're also intensely loyal, so if you produce a regular podcast, or even a short series, there's a good chance your audience will listen to them all. As I mentioned, video podcasts are becoming as common as audio. There are several reasons for this. One of the main platforms for accessing media content on the internet these days is YouTube, which is a video platform, and podcasters find it easy to post content there and find a wide audience of potential viewers. Secondly, people just like video. We're hardwired to watch as well as listen, and being able to see the person speaking can build trust and retain attention much more effectively. Watching something grabs people's attention, and the visual learners amongst us benefit from having that extra set of information about what's going on. Of course, many of us also feel that we have good faces for radio and would rather not appear on film at all. Besides, filming yourself well isn't easy, as you can see. Thankfully, there are many different formats you can use for a video podcast which don't involve staring down the barrel of a camera or, worse, looking slightly away from the camera so that you can follow your script, as I'm doing now. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the ways that you can structure a video or an audio podcast. A podcast needs to follow a structure of some sort so people can follow what's going on. The traditional storybook structure of beginning, middle, and end is a reliable starting point, even if your podcast isn't telling a story. An introduction followed by main content with a summary and a sign-off at the end follows this pattern, for example. I think it's a good idea to write a script to keep you on track when you make your podcast. Just like a meeting or a conference presentation, this can be a set of notes from which you speak off the cuff, or a word-for-word script that you read. You'll only know what works best for you by trying it out. People listening to podcasts are interested in learning something from you, so it's an opportunity to talk to an interested audience about your archive collections, new accessions, conserving records, storage issues, upcoming exhibitions, exciting finds, projects and visits, stories and people and places that you know are part of your collections. In fact, anything that you think will be of interest to people who have already chosen to listen to your podcast. My suggestion is to start small and focused. 10 to 15 minutes is a good length for a podcast, and it's a manageable length of recording to prepare, record, and upload. If you allow for around 120 words a minute at an average reading speed, that means a 15-minute podcast is around 1,800 words, or around 3 printed pages at 12-point font. We'll explore structuring your podcasts in more detail in our 10, 20, 30 live learning webinar. What equipment do you need to record a podcast? For an audio podcast, you need something to capture your voice and something to record it. And if you're including video, you need a video camera. The simplest device for achieving this is a smartphone or a tablet, which has a camera, microphone, and recording software all built in. Certainly for first experimenting with podcasts, I'd recommend using a phone or a tablet. It's a good idea to have a way of holding the device steady while you're recording, which can be as simple as propping it up on some books or use a small tripod with a holder mounted on the top. Make sure you don't cover up the microphone when you fix your device in position. It's easy to do this because it's not always obvious where the microphone is, so check it. It's often located on the bottom edge of the device, for example, and it's easy to cover up if you prop the phone up on a shelf or a stack of books. Having said all this, you'll get a better result making a recording using a laptop or a desktop computer. Again, these often have built-in microphones and cameras, or you can improve the quality using a plug-in USB microphone and a webcam. I'd certainly recommend sourcing a USB microphone if you can, because the sound quality improves dramatically if the microphone is better quality and it's nearer your voice. You can buy clip-on lapel microphones, for example, or ones that stand on the desk like the one I'm using here. For recording your podcast, you need audio or video recording software on your device or computer. Most phones and tablets have basic built-in software apps that will do this, such as voice memo apps and sound recorders. The audio company Zoom, confusingly not the video conferencing platform being used by the whole world just now, but a German company that makes audio recorders, has free recording software for iPhones and iPads, which works well, while HiQ and RecForge make recording apps for Android devices. If you're using a computer, Audacity is a reliable and free voice recorder and audio editor. For video, both Mac and Windows computers have built-in recording software that does a good job, QuickTime on a Mac and the Camera app in Windows 10. Again, we'll look at equipment in more detail in our 10, 20, 30 webinar. Now, making a video or audio recording also means doing some editing, even if it's just trimming the beginning and end and taking out some pauses. The same software I mentioned will enable you to do this, but if you want to do more ambitious edits, like adding titles or graphics, then a more comprehensive piece of software is needed. OpenShot Video Editor is a free open-source software program that achieves this. It's simple to use and allows you to edit video, add titles, transitions, effects, and music, as well as many other high-end features. Other software is available, of course, and I'll look at this in the webinar. Let's have a quick look at different styles of podcast. The simplest podcast is a monologue presented by one person to microphone or camera. These are straightforward to create, but it's important to have a style that engages with the audience. Radio presenters often talk about imagining the one listener that they're talking to personally, rather than speaking generally to a microphone as if it's an empty room. Many podcasts involve two presenters talking to each other. One might interview the other, or the podcast might be a conversation between them. Sometimes presenters have two different styles to add humor or alternative points of view. Your podcast can be filmed directly to camera, or interview style with people speaking to each other with the camera to the side. Another technique involves something called B-roll recording, which is where you add video of a place or an object or historical video with the podcast as a voiceover. You can also add titles and graphics, animations, or any combination of these things as the visual elements. On the audio side, you might add music, ambient sound recordings, or sound effects to create atmosphere. Think of documentary styles from television and you get the idea. Whatever you do, it's a good idea to be consistent with your style within a podcast and also across a series of them. I recommend watching some different styles of podcasts to decide on style elements that you like, then decide whether to use them in your own podcasts. Again, start simple by delivering a short podcast talk to camera and see how it goes. Once you've made a podcast, what do you do with it? Well, what sets a podcast apart from a straight digital film or audio file is that it's available as part of a series, or simply that it's collected with others in a place on the internet where people can go to find it. So you could set up a channel on YouTube or Spotify and upload your podcast there. Send out a link to it through social media, email lists, your organization's website and other channels, and hope that people start to listen or watch. There are podcasting host services such as Apple Podcasts, and there's software available to guide you through the process of submitting them to these services. We'll have a look at some of the options around this in the webinar. Before joining us for our 10, 20, 30 webinar on video and audio podcasts, here are some online resources and background reading that you might find it useful to look at. Links to all of these are below. In the webinar, we'll look in more detail at all the aspects I've mentioned here, and there's a chance to bring questions and your own experience to share. Thanks for watching. See you next time.